Hi, I'm going to talk about incomplete and codominance. I'll start with incomplete dominance, give you a few examples, and we'll try a few problems. And then we'll talk about codominance and do a few examples of that, including blood type. So these two types of inheritance are somewhat similar, and people do tend to get them mixed up. So let's make sure you understand the difference between the two. So incomplete dominance, the important thing to remember about incomplete dominance is that both alleles are somewhat dominant, and so neither can dominate the other. And what will happen is you'll get a combined or a third phenotype. So here's a really good example here, myself up here. So here we've got a white flower and a red flower. It says snapdragons, but I found pictures of roses and it really doesn't matter. So the white flower, the white alleles are dominant and the red alleles are also dominant, and neither one is dominant enough to overpower the other one. So you get the third phenotype of being a mixture of the red and white. So it's kind of like you were mixing paint. You've got red and white, and if you mixed the red and white paint, you would get pink. So that's incomplete dominance. Neither one will completely dominate the other one. You'll end up with something in between. So what you'll get is basically a hybrid organism that's showing the third phenotype, not a usual dominant or recessive like you've looked at in Mendelian genetics, but a third and different phenotype. So there's a blending, like in my example there. You get the red and the white. So I want to try just a couple problems with you just to make sure that this concept is understandable. So my first problem is to cross red flowers with white flowers. So I am going to, they're all the same thing. I'm talking about flowers. So I'm going to put in F's here. And then I'm going to use a little superscript here because neither one is dominant. So this is just saying this white flower has white alleles. And then I'll do the same over here. I'm sorry, I can't write very well with the mouse, but okay, so you'll end up with something like this. So now this flower here is going to get a W from this one and an R from this one. And the same is going to happen here. You're going to get a W from this white flower and an R from this one when these are crossed. And you can see that, well, you can probably see that everything's going to be the same here and here as well. So if we went back to the concept of the red and the white mixing together like paint. So if we're getting a white and a red allele, you should be able to understand that the phenotype for that is pink. You're going to get 100% pink. Oh boy. So all your offspring are going to be pink, 100%, when you cross red and white flowers. Now let's take those pink flowers that we've crossed and cross them with another pink flower. So here's my flower. And remember, it's going to have a red allele and it's also going to have a white allele, one of each, and that's what's making it pink. And I'm going to cross it with another pink flower with the red allele and the white allele. Okay, so this flower is going to get an R for red from that parent and an R for red for that one. So you're going to get a red flower back here from those two pink flowers. And here you're going to get a red and a W. So that one is going to be pink. Now what about this one? It's going to get an R from this parent and a white from that parent. So that one's going to be pink as well. And now, ta-da, this one's getting a W from each parent. So you're also going to get the white flower again. So what you're going to have is a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. So you're going to, and that's for phenotype and genotype, right? You're going to have 1 red flower to 2 pink flowers to 1 white flower. So let's contrast that to codominance. It's very similar to incomplete dominance, but the difference is in codominance, the two traits appear together in the phenotype of the hybrid organisms. So in the case of this cattle, there's also a red and a white allele. Neither dominates, but you do not get a mixture. So if this cattle here, this cow, was a flower, you might expect it to be pink. But that's not what happens in codominance. It's not a mixture. You don't get a new third phenotype. You get an offspring which has some of both. So it has some red hairs and it has some white hairs, giving it a spotted appearance. So you don't get a pink cow, although that would be fun to get a pink cow, but you don't get a pink cow. You get a red a cow with some red hairs and some white hairs, and that's codominant. So the red is expressed, but the white is also expressed. Keep forgetting that. So a very common phenotype used in questions of codominance is what we call the roan fur, and that just means that red and white coloration. So cattle can be all red, like RR, or WW for all white, or the roan RW together, and that would be codominance. Another really good example of codominance is human blood type AB, in which two types of the protein A and B appear together on the surface of the red blood cells. And we are going to get back to that, and we're going to talk about blood types in a few minutes. But first of all, let's try the cow problem. So we're taking a red cow and a white bull here, and we're going to cross them. This time I'm not going to use the superscripts, only because it's really hard to do with the mouse, and the answer isn't going to be any different if I don't. So I've got my red cow with the 2 R's and the white bull. And you can probably see that all the offspring are going to be RW, RW. It doesn't really matter whether you're putting the R first or the W first. Some people just like to go in alphabetical order, but it doesn't matter. It's like 2 times 3 is 6, but 3 times 2 is also 6. So these cattle are all going to be roan. They're all going to have some white hairs and some red hairs. So let's move on to the blood type here. So as you know, there are 4 different types of human blood type. There's multiple alleles for human blood type. So we can have type A and type B, which are codominant. So A and B are both dominant. One is neither more dominant than the other. So if you were to get an A from one parent and a B from the other parent, you would end up with type AB blood. Now, O is recessive. So when we're annotating blood type, we use the capital letter I, and that has something to do with an antigen in the blood type. It's a lot of writing, so we'll see how I do with the mouse here. But anyways, type A, you can either be homozygous dominant for your type A blood, and you can get one A from each parent, and it would be annotated like this. Or you could be heterozygous, in which case you got an A from one parent and you got a type O from the other. Or you could have type B blood, in which case you could be homozygous dominant and you could have gotten a B from each parent. Or you could have a B from one parent and have gotten a recessive allele from another parent. Now, this is the situation that I was talking about here, where you got an A from one of your parents and a B from the other, and because they're codominant, neither one is going to dominate the other, so you get a combined phenotype here of type AB. The other possibility is that you get a recessive allele from each parent and end up with type O blood. I would probably pause and take the time to write this chart down because this is somewhat important to you. Okay, so we're going to do a few crosses here. So cross homozygous type A blood with homozygous type B blood. What you could do is you could pause, try to do this on your own, and then come back and make sure that you're doing it right. So I'm going to start homozygous type A blood. So if you have homozygous type A, you're going to have an A from both parents here, and homozygous type B blood. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, so that's what your other parent looks like. Okay, so now you, or the offspring here, is going to get an A from this parent and a B from this parent, and is going to have type AB blood. And you can see that's going to be the same in each situation. There's no other blood type possible for these offspring. All of this couple's offspring is going to have type AB blood, 100%. My goodness. These get worse and worse as I do them. Okay. Okay, so now this possibility is a heterozygous type A blood. So you still have an A allele, but because you're heterozygous, you've got a recessive allele as well. And homozygous type B blood, so what does that mean? You're going to have two dominant Bs here. Okay, so possibility for the offspring, if you want to stop and pause and see if you can solve this yourself, that would be great. Okay, so A, B, this offspring is going to have type AB blood. Now, this offspring's getting a B from this parent and a recessive allele from this parent. So this offspring would have type B blood. They would be heterozygous for type B blood. Now here, you're going to see the same thing. As you can probably already tell, you're going to get an A from one parent and a B from the other. You're going to have type AB blood. And here, you're going to have type B, and you're getting, again, the recessive allele from the other parent. So you are going to be 50-50. So in other words, well, you could say 50-50, or you could say 1-to-1, that you're going to have AB type blood to type B blood. And those are the phenotypes. Okay, let's move on. Try another one. Again, if you want to pause and then try it yourself, that's a great idea. Okay, heterozygous type A blood means you have an A and a recessive, right? And heterozygous type B blood. Okay, so you can see here you're getting a dominant A and a dominant B from that parent. So your blood type here would end up being A, B. Now here you're getting a dominant B from this parent and a recessive from that parent. So you're going to have type B blood, be heterozygous for type B blood. Here you're getting an A from this parent and a recessive allele from this parent. So you're going to have type A blood. Now here, look what's going to happen. You're going to get a recessive allele from each parent, and you are going to have type O blood. So you can see that two heterozygous parents one was heterozygous for type A blood and the other was heterozygous for type B blood can have a child with any of the four blood types. So in this case, we would call that a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 ratio. Try another one. Now this one, we're going to cross type O blood. So we're going to annotate it like that with heterozygous type B blood. So heterozygous, so they're going to have a recessive allele. So look what's going to happen here. We're going to get the dominant B from this parent and a recessive allele. And the same thing's going to happen here. And here we're going to get the two recessives and end up with type O blood. And that's going to happen here as well. So here we've got a 50-50 or a 1-to-1 ratio, depending on how you want to say that. So you could either have type B blood or type O blood. You've got a 1-to-1 chance or a 50-50 or however you want to say that. Okay, keep going. Type O blood. And again, it doesn't matter whether you put the type O blood here or here. It's the same thing. Either way you do it, so it doesn't really matter. With type AB blood. Usually you'll get questions like, could people with these blood types have a child with type O blood or something like that? It'll be a problem. And we'll try a few of those, not right now. So type A blood, heterozygous, and the same is going to happen here. Type A blood, heterozygous, and here you're getting a B with the recessive, and here you're getting a B with the recessive. So we've got, again, we have a 1-to-1 ratio. Their offspring could either have type A blood or type B blood. So if they did have a child with type O blood, it isn't theirs. Okay, so a lot of you at this point usually ask me about the Rh factor. And just so it's clear, I guess, if you are wondering that about the positive or negative bloods, that has to do with that has to do with something that is sorted out independently of blood type, where positive is a dominant allele and recessive negative is a recessive allele. So that's totally separate, and it separates out independently from the actual blood type. So just because your dad was B negative doesn't mean you can't have got his B but still be positive, because you got the positive from your mom. So that's totally separate. So if we wanted to look at the Rh factor as well, we would have to do a dihybrid cross, but that's something for another day. But I just usually get asked this question at this point. And so yes, it is passed along from parent to offspring, but it is independent of blood type. And that is the end for today.